I did not mean to propose. That's the first truth, the cleanest one, the one I clung to like a railing when everything else became a fall. In my world, my very normal world, words were air and intention was the engine. People said things they didn't mean all the time. You apologized. You explained. You blamed stress or sarcasm or that weird tone your voice got when you were tired. Language was elastic. But the moment I stepped into the vampire throne hall, language stopped being elastic and became iron. It began with a door that shouldn't have existed. I was walking home from a late shift, my phone dead, my brain running on fumes and half-cold coffee. The alley behind the old cathedral had always been a shortcut. Graffiti, dumpsters, the smell of rain on brick. But that night the brick wall at the far end of the alley was wrong. A seam ran through it like a scar. Black stone framed it, polished so perfectly it looked wet. A door without hinges, without handle, without explanation. I should have turned around. Instead, I did what exhausted people do when confronted with the impossible. I assumed there was a reasonable explanation hiding somewhere behind my irritation. Maybe it was a movie set. Maybe it was an art installation. Maybe I'd taken a wrong turn. I pressed my palm to the stone. It warmed under my hand like skin waking. And the door opened as if it had been waiting for my touch since before my name was ever given to me. Air rolled out, cold, scented with old incense and something like roses steeped in blood. The alley's sounds died instantly as if the city had been muted. My stomach tightened. That sensation you get when you realize you've walked into a room where everyone already knows you shouldn't be there. Beyond the threshold was not a room. It was a corridor of black stone, vaulted and impossibly deep, lit by red candles floating at different heights like patient fireflies. The wax did not drip. The flames did not flicker. They simply burned, steady as a gaze. I took one step. The door sealed behind me without a sound, and the last thread tying me to my street, my world, my rules, snapped. The corridor opened into a vast hall that stole the air from my lungs. Massive stone pillars rose like petrified trees, carved with figures that seemed to twist when I tried to focus. Stained glass windows towered along the walls, but they did not show saints or angels. They showed kings with hollow eyes, lovers embracing while their shadows devoured each other, moons splitting like fruit. Mist clung to the floor, swirling around my shoes as if tasting me. Above, the ceiling disappeared into darkness, the kind of darkness that didn't merely lack light but owned it. At the far end, a throne. Not gold. Not jewel-encrusted. It was carved from something darker than obsidian, shaped like folded wings. Anne standing before it, as if she had stepped out of a nightmare wearing the patience of a queen, was her. The vampire queen. Tall. Regally still. Her gown was black and crimson, elegant in a way that felt like a blade disguised as silk. Gothic embroidery traced her waist and sleeves like thorn vines. Silver jewelry caught the candlelight in sharp flashes. Necklace, rings, delicate chains that looked like they'd been made to bind promises rather than decorate flesh. A crown sat on her head, dark metal, subtle, not gaudy, its shape suggesting both authority and restraint, like she didn't need spectacle to be obeyed. Her skin was pale in the way moonlight is pale, not sickly but otherworldly. Her eyes glowed faintly red, the glow of embers hidden beneath ash. Calm expression. Not warm. Not cruel. Just certain. Around her, the hall held its breath. There were others too, shapes in the shadows, courtiers perhaps, or guards. I could feel their attention like fingertips pressing into my skin. But their faces were indistinct, as if the hall itself didn't grant them definition until the queen allowed it. My instincts screamed at me to run. My body stayed where it was. Her gaze found me and pinned me in place. Human, she said. One word. And the candle flames leaned toward her voice as if listening. My mouth went dry. I'm sorry. I don't know how I got here. The queen descended one step from the raised platform with a slow, fluid grace. Every movement was deliberate, like choreography for a ritual older than churches. She came closer, not hurried, not hesitant. A predator doesn't rush when it already owns the end of the chase. You came through my veil, she said. You touched my gate with unclaimed intent. I swallowed. I thought it was a door. It is. Her voice was low and controlled, almost gentle, and that was worse than shouting. Rage I could understand. Calm meant she had no fear of consequence. Somewhere behind her, something shifted in the shadows. An approving murmur, the soft sound of cloth, a faint metallic clink. The queen stopped an arm's length away. I could smell her now. Roses, yes, but also cold stone after rain, and something metallic that made my pulse trip. You are afraid, she observed. Yeah. I forced a laugh that came out thin. That's accurate. She studied me like a judge studies a witness. Say your name. My mind snagged on that. Not tell me but say. Like the act mattered. Eli, I said. Eli Mercer. The Queen's eyelids lowered slightly as if tasting the sound. Eli Mercer. The way she repeated it felt like a hook sinking into water. Your bloodline is unremarkable, she continued, and my cheeks burned at the bluntness. Your soul is loud. I blinked. My soul is what? Loud, she repeated, and for the first time something like amusement flickered at the corner of her mouth, so brief I wondered if I'd imagined it. It echoes. It does not know how to be silent in sacred places. I'm sorry, I said again because my vocabulary had shrunk to a handful of useless words. The Queen's gaze dropped to my hands. I'd been clenching them into fists. I didn't realize until my nails dug into my palms. Unclench, she instructed. I didn't want to obey. But my fingers loosened as if the command had been tied to muscle memory I didn't own. Her hand reached for mine. It should have been cold. It was cool, yes, but not dead. Like river water under moonlight. Her fingers wrapped around my hand with a firmness that could have been reassurance if it hadn't felt like a seal. The hall reacted. The floating candles flared redder. The mist rose in delicate spirals. A tremor passed through the pillars, almost too subtle to notice, like stone shifting in its sleep. The Queen's thumb brushed the inside of my wrist. Something in my body answered, a jolt that wasn't desire exactly, it was recognition, the horrifying sensation of being identified by something ancient. I jerked, startled. What are you? Then she spoke, and the words that came next were the ones that ruined me. Speak your intention, she said softly. So my court may hear it. I stared at her, confused and desperate and too tired for riddles. My intention is to leave. A ripple moved through the shadows, a collective inhale. The Queen tilted her head. That is your intention? Yes, I said quickly, thinking honesty might save me. I didn't come here on purpose. I don't want trouble. I just want to go home. Her eyes glowed a shade brighter. Home. Yeah, I said. Home. Look, if I offended you, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to trespass. The Queen's fingers tightened around mine, not painfully, but with the finality of a clasped lock. Words are not meaning, she murmured. Words are doing. I don't understand. You will. The hall's air thickened, like the moment before lightning strikes. I tried to pull my hand away, but it wouldn't move. Not because she was holding too tightly, because the space between our hands had become something else. A bond, invisible and heavy like chains made of vows. Fear sharpened into panic. Okay, I said, voice rising. Okay, listen. I'm just some guy. I'm not. This isn't. Whatever you think is happening, you've got the wrong person. Her expression remained calm. Dangerously calm. Then speak, she said, and correct what you have done. Relief surged. Yes, okay. I tried to breathe. Tried to think. I didn't mean anything by touching you. I didn't mean, In my frantic search for the right words, my brain spat out something I'd heard in a movie once. Some faux medieval line meant to sound dramatic. I didn't mean to bind myself to you, I blurted, and then because my mouth was moving faster than my judgment, I added, I didn't mean to offer you my hand, my faith, and my future. Silence slammed down. The Queen did not blink. Behind her, the shadows moved like a single organism. A low sound spread through the hall. Astonishment, hunger, glee, outrage, all braided together. I didn't even know what I'd said wrong until the Queen's smile appeared, small, controlled, and utterly lethal. Oh, she murmured. You spoke the vow. I stared at her. The what? Her thumb traced my pulse again. The ancient engagement phrase. The offering of 3. And faith. Future. My stomach dropped so hard it felt like my organs shifted. No, I said immediately. No, that's not, I didn't know. But you said it, she replied, and her voice was still gentle, which made the words worse. In my hall. Before my court. With my hand in yours. My heart hammered. That's not fair. The Queen's gaze hardened by a fraction. Fair is a human word used by the powerless to shame the powerful into hesitation. The candles flared again, and the stained glass seemed to darken, colors bleeding into deeper crimson. A figure stepped forward from the shadows on the right, tall, thin, dressed in velvet so dark it absorbed light. His hair was silver, his eyes black. He bowed to the queen, then turned to me with the expression of someone watching a mouse realize the trap has already snapped shut. "Your Majesty," he said, voice like parchment, "the vow has been witnessed. Shall I summon the archivist to record the betrothal?" Betrothal. The word hit like a fist. I yanked my hand again. This time it moved because she let it. I stumbled backward, almost tripping over the mist. "No," I said louder, shaking. "No, no, no. I'm not engaged to anyone. I'm not. This is insane. I'm not marrying a vampire queen because I misspoke." The hall answered with laughter that wasn't quite laughter. A soft, cruel music. The queen watched me, unbothered, as if I were a candle sputtering before it went out. "You entered my throne hall," she said. "You touched my hand. You spoke the vow. I didn't know the vow. Law does not vanish because you are ignorant of it." I felt my throat tighten. "Then undo it." Her eyes met mine. The faint red glow seemed to seep into the air. "There is no undoing," she said. "Only fulfillment. Or punishment." The mist curled around my ankles like fingers. I thought of my apartment. My stupid unwashed dishes. My neighbor's dog barking at 3 a.m. I thought of the ordinary annoyances I'd complained about hours ago, as if they had been weights on my life, now revealed as anchors I would have killed to cling to. "This can't be real," I whispered. The queen stepped closer. The candles shifted with her, like a flock following its queen. "It is real," she said. "And now you belong to my story." Then she reached out again and took my hand, not as a question, not as a request. Her touch was a declaration. "Announce it," she commanded, and her voice cracked through the hall like a whip made of velvet. "So that the world itself must hear." My lips trembled. I tried to refuse. But something inside me, the part of me that responded to the earlier command to unclench, moved without permission. Words climbed up my throat like iron filings pulled by a magnet. My voice shook. The queen's eyes held mine, and I saw something there, just for an instant. An old loneliness buried so deep it had fossilized. Then it vanished behind the crown of authority. "I said the wrong words," I whispered. The queen's smile sharpened. "And now," she replied, "you are engaged to a vampire queen." The hall erupted, not in celebration, not exactly. In acceptance. A ritual click, a cosmic ledger updated. A ring of dark metal appeared in her palm as if it had been hiding in shadow. It was simple, unadorned, but the moment she slid it onto my finger I felt it bite, just enough to draw a bead of blood. The blood did not fall. It rose, suspended, shimmering in the candlelight. Then it sank into the ring, disappearing. The ring warmed. My engagement became a fact the universe recognized. And behind the queen, the stained glass showed a new image, one that hadn't been there before. A human man in modern clothes, hand in hand with a crowned vampire, their shadows intertwined like vines. It was me. It was already written. They did not throw me in a dungeon. That would have been simpler. Instead they gave me a room. A suite, technically, stone walls softened by heavy black drapes, a bed large enough to make me feel like a child, a fireplace that burned without wood. A silver basin filled itself with water when I approached. A mirror hung above it, but when I looked into it, I didn't see my reflection. I saw the throne hall. I saw the queen. And I saw myself, standing there, frozen, ring glinting like a new shackle. The mirror wasn't for vanity. It was for reminding. A servant, if that's what she was, entered without knocking. She moved like smoke given shape. Her eyes were the color of dried blood, her hair pinned in severe braids. She carried folded clothes, black, tailored, old-fashioned, but somehow fitted to my body like someone had measured me with their mind. "You will wear these," she said. "I want my own clothes," I snapped, because anger was the only thing keeping panic from swallowing me whole. She looked at me like one looks at an insect that has learned to speak. "Your own clothes are from your own life," she said. "That life is paused, like a video, like a game." My stomach churned. "I need to go home. I have a job. People will notice I'm gone." "They will not." My throat tightened. "What do you mean they won't?" She set the clothes on a chair. "Time moves differently beyond the veil. Your city is a candle outside this hall. Here we are the cathedral." I didn't fully understand, but the implication was enough. The world I knew could be held still like breath in someone else's lungs. I didn't agree to this, I said, quieter now. She lifted her gaze to my ring. You did. With your words. I hated that ring. I hated how it sat there, ordinary looking, while it rewrote my existence. What is this place? I demanded. Eboncourt, she answered. Seat of House Verinder. Domain of Her Majesty, Queen Saralith. The name hit the air like a spell, Saralith. It sounded like silk tearing. And you are, what? I asked. She paused and something almost like pride flickered. I am Mara, handmaid of the Queen, keeper of her silences. Tell her I want out of this, I said. Tell her it was a mistake. Mara's expression did not change, but the shadows in the corners of the room seemed to shift as if amused. The Queen does not unmake what the court has witnessed, she said. If you seek freedom, you must seek it within the law. What law? I barked. Mara turned toward the door. Vampire law. Then she left and the door closed with finality. I sat on the edge of the bed and tried to think like a rational person. But rationality is a fragile thing when your entire framework for reality has been peeled away. There was a ring on my finger that made my blood feel like it had a leash. I tried to pull it off. It didn't budge. I twisted, yanked, even used soap from the basin like you do when a ring gets stuck. My skin reddened. The ring stayed like it had fused to my bone. When I stopped breathing hard, the ring felt warmer. Not hot, just awake. As if it liked being fought. I stood and paced. The suite had a balcony. Heavy drapes parted at my touch, revealing an open archway. Beyond it was not a courtyard. It was a night sky that looked too close. A forest of black spires rose in the distance like teeth. Somewhere below, I heard water, maybe a river, maybe something worse. Red lights floated through the air like embers. The air smelled of damp earth and ancient stone. No city lights. No traffic hum. Just a silence so deep it felt like pressure. I gripped the stone railing and stared into it, trying to locate any point of familiarity. There was none. Behind me, my reflectionless mirror watched like an eye. I heard footsteps again, and this time my body tensed like it had learned the rules of fear quickly. The door opened. 2 figures entered, both male, both dressed in dark formal clothing that looked like it belonged to another century. One had hair the color of ink and eyes the color of bruises. The other was older, his hair silver, his face sharp, his smile polite in the way a blade is polite. The silver-haired one bowed slightly. Lord Casimir Var, he introduced himself, voice smooth. Chancellor of Eboncourt. Advisor to Her Majesty. The younger one didn't bow. He looked at me like I was a stain. Lord Ashran Verinder, he said. Bloodkin of the Queen. Bloodkin. That phrase carried weight. Casimir's gaze rested on my ring. The court is, intrigued. A human fiancé. It has been centuries since the vow was spoken in this hall. I didn't mean it, I said, exhausted by repeating myself. Ashren's eyes narrowed, red flickering in his irises. Intent does not matter. Only the spoken oath. We do not make law from feelings. I laughed, a harsh sound. Funny because you're vampires. You literally drink people. Ashran stepped forward, too fast to track. One moment he was by the door, the next he was inches from my face. His smile was sharp. We drink blood, he said softly, not stupidity. And yet you bleed both. Casimir raised a hand, a gentle warning. Ashran. Ashren's gaze flicked to him, then back to me. He leaned closer, inhaled near my neck like scent mattered. You smell like sun, he murmured, almost disgusted. Her Majesty has always hated the sun. My stomach tightened. Then why would she? Casimir answered before Ashran could. Because you spoke the vow. Because the court witnessed it. Because the world beyond the veil is shifting. Shifting how? I asked. Casimir's smile faded into something more serious. There are forces that watch Eboncourt. Forces that have waited for weakness. A queen without a consort is a queen without a shield. So I'm a shield? I snapped. You want to marry me to her to protect her politically? Ashren's expression twisted. Do not presume you have value. Casimir's eyes remained calm. You have symbolic value, Eli Mercer. A human engagement changes the shape of old treaties. I stared at him. Treaties? Between houses, Casimir said. Between courts. Between hunger and restraint. Ashran folded his arms. And between Her Majesty and the thing that sleeps beneath the throne. My skin prickled. What thing? Ashren's eyes glinted. You will learn. You will learn quickly. Casimir stepped closer, his tone shifting into something almost kind. You are frightened. That is natural. But you must understand, you cannot simply leave. I'm not staying, I said even as my voice faltered. Casimir's gaze dropped to my ring again. The ring is a covenant. It binds your future to hers. If you attempt to sever it by force, the covenant will seek repayment. What does that mean? Ashran smiled without humor. It means it will take what you promised. Your hand. Your faith. Your future. My mouth went cold. My hand? Like literally? Ashran shrugged. Casual cruelty. Literal. Metaphorical. The covenant enjoys creativity. Casimir sighed softly as if disappointed by Ashran's bluntness. There is a way through this, he said. A path that honors the law while preserving your integrity. I didn't trust him. But I had nothing else. What path? I asked. Casimir's eyes held mine. Fulfill the engagement ritual. Become the queen's consort in form, if not in heart. Then, when the moon of St. Valor rises, 3 nights from now, petition the court for release by proof. Proof of what? I demanded. Proof that your vow was spoken without true understanding, Casimir said. The court will demand a trial. Trials here are not performed with lawyers. They are performed with memory. My stomach twisted again. Memory? Ashren's voice lowered. They will look into you. Into what you meant. Into what you are. I swallowed. And if I fail? Ashren's eyes gleamed redder. Then you become hers. Truly. Silence pressed in. Casimir's voice softened. You will meet Her Majesty tonight. There will be a formal acknowledgement. You will not insult her. You will not try to run. You will not speak carelessly. I stared at him. That's rich advice given how I got here. His smile returned faint. Indeed. When they left, the room felt colder. I looked down at the ring again. It sat there like a quiet verdict. And for the first time, the fear shifted into something else. Not acceptance, but resolve sharpened by survival. If words had done this, then words, careful, precise, deliberate, might be the only way out. But the problem was, I didn't know their language. And in Ebon Court, ignorance was not a defense. It was prey behavior. They brought me back to the throne hall at night, though night was meaningless here. The sky beyond the stained glass never brightened. It only shifted between shades of darkness, like an ocean changing moods. Mara dressed me in the clothes they'd prepared, black trousers, a high-collared shirt, a coat with subtle embroidery that looked like it might be protective symbols disguised as fashion. I caught myself in the reflectionless mirror and felt a strange anger flare. I looked like a character in someone else's story. Mara adjusted my collar with quick, efficient fingers. Do not speak unless asked, she murmured. I'm the fiancé, I muttered. Apparently. Mara's hands paused for half a second, just long enough to suggest she found that statement either tragic or funny. Then she resumed. Do not make jokes in sacred halls. Right, I said. No jokes. Only vows that ruin my life. She didn't respond. When we entered the hall, the court was already assembled. They were everywhere now that my eyes had learned to see them. Figures in velvet and lace and armor, faces pale as carved marble, eyes glowing red or black or something stranger. Some looked young, some looked ancient. Their attention pressed on me like heat. At the far end, Queen Saralith sat on her throne. Seated, she seemed even more terrifying, not because she was larger but because the throne made her stillness absolute. A queen does not need to move. The world moves around her. As I approached, my ring warmed. The court fell silent. Casimir stood near the throne, hands folded, expression composed. Ashran leaned against a pillar, arms crossed, watching me like a man watching a condemned prisoner walk to the platform. Saralith's gaze settled on me. Eli Mercer, she said, voice carrying without effort. You return. Yeah, I said because I'm an idiot. Then I swallowed and corrected myself. Yes, Your Majesty. A faint amusement flickered again, like she was entertained by the concept of me trying. You stand before my court as one who has offered himself, she said. Do you deny your vow? My heart hammered. Every instinct screamed, say yes. Deny it. Reject it. But Casimir's warning echoed, do not insult her. Do not speak carelessly. I forced my voice steady. I deny that I understood what I was saying. A murmur moved through the court, like wind through dead leaves. Saralith's expression remained calm. Understanding is not required for law. Then, why does understanding matter for a trial? I asked before I could stop myself. The hall chilled. Ashren's lips curled, pleased at my mistake. But Saralith didn't lash out. She simply regarded me with that same terrible patience. Because law is not only binding, she said. It is also balance. The vow binds you to me. But a vow spoken without awareness is a crack in the stone. And cracks invite predators. Her gaze shifted briefly toward the pillars, toward the shadows between them. For a second I thought I saw something there, a deeper darkness moving like a massive breath. Then it was gone. Approach, Saralith commanded. My feet moved as if the floor guided them. I stopped at the base of the throne steps. She descended. 1 step. 2. The hem of her gown whispered over stone. Her jewelry caught candlelight like cold stars. She stopped in front of me, close enough that I could feel the chill of her presence. Not cold like winter, cold like a tomb that has never known sunlight. Look at me, she said. I did, and I regretted it instantly because her eyes were not merely red. They were layered, red light behind darkness, behind something like grief. You fear me, she said. Yes, I admitted. But, not only fear. Her brow lifted slightly, and for the first time she looked genuinely curious. I didn't even know what I meant by that, but it was true. Fear, yes. And anger. And confusion. And beneath it all, something I hated acknowledging. The magnetic pull of her presence, like standing too close to a cliff and feeling the urge to lean forward. Saralith's gaze dropped to my ring. Your blood has fed the covenant, she murmured. Do you know what that means? I shook my head. It means the vow has tasted you, she said. And it has decided you are real. That made my skin crawl. It's sentient? In a way, she replied. Old magic is not mindless. It is hunger wearing rules. She reached out and took my hand again, lifting it between us. The ring seemed to darken, absorbing the candlelight. Her thumb brushed the metal. You will sit beside me for the ritual of acknowledgement, she said. You will eat from my table. You will wear my mark for 3 nights. And on the 3rd night, under St. Valer's moon, you may petition for release. My heart jolted. You'll allow it? Saralith's eyes returned to mine. I will allow the court to judge it. Pause. Then, unexpectedly, she leaned closer, so close her breath brushed my ear. Her voice dropped, too low for others to hear. But understand this, Eli Mercer, she murmured. If you fail, it will not be because I wished you harm. I pulled back slightly, stunned. Then why do you? Her gaze sharpened again, queenly. The private moment vanished. Because you spoke the vow, she said aloud. And because my enemies have heard it. She lifted my hand and the court watched. By witness of blood and word, Saralith proclaimed, I accept the engagement. Let the pact be recorded. Let the hall remember. The floating candles flared. The stained glass pulsed as if lit from within by red lightning. And the hall, this ancient, hungry hall, seemed to exhale, satisfied. Then Saralith turned, still holding my hand, and guided me up the steps toward the throne. Every eye followed me. Every shadow listened. And as I sat beside her, rigid, trembling, trying not to die of terror, I realized something far worse than being trapped. I was now part of her court's entertainment. A human fiancé. A novelty. A fragile thing perched beside a queen who could end me with a thought. Yet when Saralith sat, her arm brushed mine, and I felt a quiet tension in her body, controlled, restrained, like someone holding back a storm. This wasn't just politics. Something about this vow mattered to her in a way the court didn't fully understand. And if I wanted to survive, I needed to understand it before the vow decided to collect what it was owed. The feast was not a feast like my world's feasts. There was no laughter that reached the eyes. No warmth. No sloppy abundance. It was a ceremony of appetite disguised as elegance. A long table stretched beneath the pillars, set with black plates and silver cutlery that reflected candlelight like thin moons. Goblets held a liquid darker than wine, almost thick, catching light in slow, oily glints. Platters carried meats so rare they looked alive, fruits that gleamed like jewels, bread that smelled faintly of ash. And everywhere, was the scent. Blood. Not fresh blood, not the metallic tang of a cut finger. This was older, curated, infused with herbs and magic. like perfume made from violence. Saralith sat at the head of the table. I sat beside her as required. The ring on my finger felt heavier with every passing minute, like it was learning my pulse. Courtiers watched me with open curiosity now. Some whispered behind hands. Some stared as if I were a new species. Ashran sat across from me, lounging like he owned the table. His gaze never left my throat. Casimir sat near Saralith's other side, calm as ever, speaking softly with a pale woman whose eyes were entirely black. Mara stood behind Saralith, silent, a shadow with braids. A servant poured something into my goblet. I stared at it. "What is this?" Saralith answered without looking at me. "A cordial. It will keep you from fainting." "I'm not going to drink." Her gaze flicked to me and my words died. Not because she threatened me. Because her eyes held a truth I couldn't ignore. This court was not built for human bodies. If I wanted to last 3 nights, I would need whatever protection they were offering. I lifted the goblet and sipped. The taste was strange. Sweet, then bitter, then a cold heat spreading down my throat. My vision sharpened. The candle flame seemed clearer. The whispers in the room separated into distinct sounds. My heart still hammered, but my body felt steadier. Saralith's voice, low, reached me. "It is mixed with nightshade and salt." "That sounds poisonous," I murmured. "It would be," she said, "if you were not wearing my mark." "My mark?" I stared at my ring. Saralith's fingers brushed the back of my hand in a motion that looked casual to others. "The ring is not only covenant. It is protection. It tells my court you are mine. And it tells their teeth to hesitate." I swallowed hard. "That's comforting." "It should terrify you," she replied, calm. The meal continued. They spoke of politics as if politics were weather. Inevitable, cold, something you learn to read in the bones of the world. Names of houses drifted across the table. House Morvain, House Kether, the Ash Choir, the Crimson Synod. I didn't know what any of it meant, but I could feel the tension in the way Saralith's fingers rested on her goblet, in the way Ashren's gaze sharpened when certain names were spoken. At some point, a courtier, a beautiful man with hair like white silk, leaned toward me. "Does sunlight burn you?" he asked brightly, as if discussing hobbies. I blinked. "No." He looked disappointed. "Pity. I had hoped the queen had found something truly exotic." I clenched my jaw. Saralith's voice cut through, soft and lethal. "Do not speak of him as though he were food." The courtier froze, then bowed quickly. "Forgive me, Majesty." Saralith's gaze remained on him. "You will." The courtier retreated, pale with fear. I stared at Saralith, shocked. She hadn't defended me out of kindness, had she? Or had she? Under the table, her knee brushed mine, brief contact, a reminder of proximity. Then she leaned closer, voice barely audible. "They will test you. They will try to see what you are made of. Do not show weakness in ways they can use." I swallowed. "How do I not show weakness when I'm literally the weakest thing here?" Saralith's eyes did not soften. "By choosing what you reveal." The feast ended with a ritual. A silver knife passed along the table, each court member pressing it to their palm, letting a drop of blood fall into a black basin. When it reached me, the room fell silent again. I stared at the knife. Saralith watched me, unreadable. Casimir spoke gently. "A symbolic offering. A sign you sit under Her Majesty's protection." My hand shook as I took the knife. The blade was cold enough to sting. I pressed it to my palm and drew a shallow line. Blood welled. The scent hit the room like a bell. Eyes flared red. A low, hungry sound vibrated beneath the table. Saralith's hand closed around my wrist, not stopping me but steadying me. Her fingers pressed lightly, and the hunger in the room seemed to pull back, like dogs hearing their master's command. I let a drop fall into the basin. The basin's surface rippled, and for an instant I thought I saw something moving beneath it, something vast and coiled. Then the blood vanished into blackness. Saralith released my wrist. "Enough." The court exhaled. Ashren's smile widened, showing the edge of Fong. "He bleeds," he said, voice warm with mockery. "How charming." Saralith's gaze snapped to him. "Do not." Ashren lifted his hands, feigning innocence. "I only admire your choice, Majesty." Saralith rose from her seat, and the room moved with her like water obeying gravity. "The feast is ended." Courtiers stood, bowing, murmuring. As they filed out, Saralith remained, watching the basin. So did I. The black surface was still now, but I couldn't shake the feeling of movement underneath. "What is in there?" I asked quietly. Saralitha's voice was low. A debt. I frowned. That's not an answer. Her eyes met mine. It is the only answer I can give without awakening it. A chill ran down my spine. Saralith turned away from the basin and began walking toward a side door. Come. I hesitated. Where? To show you what you have bound yourself to, she said, and there was a thread of something in her voice, resentment perhaps or weary honesty. And to show you why I cannot simply let you go. I followed her through corridors that spiraled down beneath the hall, deeper into the castle's bones. The air grew colder, thicker. The candles here were fewer, their light dimmer, their flames more crimson than gold. At last we reached a massive door carved with symbols that made my eyes ache when I tried to read them. Saralith placed her palm against it. The door shuddered like something alive. It opened. Beyond was a chamber of black stone, circular, with a floor engraved in spiraling runes. Chains hung from the ceiling, thick as tree trunks. In the center of the room, a pit. Not a simple hole. A wound in the world. Darkness rose from it like smoke, and within that darkness I felt attention. Something aware. Something patient. Saralith stood at the edge and looked down as if staring into a mirror that hated her. This is what sleeps beneath my throne, she said softly. The vow-eater. My mouth went dry. The what? A creature older than my line, Saralith replied. It feeds on broken promises. It was bound here to protect the court's law. To punish those who speak sacred vows and then betray them. My skin crawled. So if I try to break the engagement. Saralith nodded once. It will come for you. And you? I said because the thought hit me suddenly. If you break it, will it come for you too? Saralitha's gaze stayed on the pit. Yes. Silence. Then a whisper rose from the darkness. Not words, but the sensation of language scraping along the inside of my skull. I staggered back, clutching my head. Saralitha's hand caught my shoulder, steadying me. Do not listen, she warned. It speaks in hunger. My breathing turned ragged. Why is it reacting to me? Saralitha's eyes flashed red. Because you are human. Your vows are tender. Fresh. It can taste your fear. The darkness in the pit shifted, coiling upward like a living fog. I felt the ring on my finger pulse. Then, beneath that pulse, I felt something else. A thread. A line connecting me to Saralith, stretching through the air like invisible silk. I looked at her, breath shaking. Is the ring connecting us? Saralitha's expression tightened by a fraction. Yes. So you can feel. Enough, she snapped, and the sharpness startled me because it was the first time her control cracked. Do not pry at the covenant. Not yet. The darkness below stirred more violently. Saralith raised her hand, palm outward, and spoke a word in a language that sounded like stone grinding. The darkness retreated, settling. Saralith exhaled slowly. When she looked at me again, her calm had returned, but something in her eyes was colder now. You wanted to know why your mistake cannot be easily forgiven, she said. Now you know. The law is not merely a custom. It is a chain that holds monsters in pits. I swallowed hard. So my engagement is part of the chain. Saralith nodded once. Yes. And if the chain breaks, the court burns. I stared into the pit, and for the first time I understood the true shape of my situation. This wasn't just me trapped in a gothic romance nightmare. This was me holding a piece of a world's containment system, without knowing how strong my hands were. I slept poorly. Not because the bed was uncomfortable. It was too comfortable, like sinking into velvet that wanted to swallow me. Not because of nightmares, though there were those, but because of the ring. Every time my body drifted toward sleep, the ring warmed as if it sensed my guard lowering. And in those half-dream spaces I felt Saralith. Not her voice. Not her words. Her presence. It wasn't intimate like romance. It was intimate like being watched through a keyhole you can't close. On the first morning, if we can call it morning, Mara brought me food that looked normal enough. Bread, fruit, something like tea. She watched me eat with the expression of someone monitoring an experiment. Is she in my head? I asked, voice hoarse. Mara's eyes flicked to the ring. The covenant connects. That's not an answer, I snapped. Mara's gaze remained calm. It is the only answer that matters. I pushed the plate away. Tell her I need to talk. She knows, Mara said. Then why isn't she here? I demanded. Mara's expression changed, so slightly it might have been my imagination. Because the queen does not indulge weakness. Anger flared again. So I'm weakness. No, Mara said quietly. You are risk. That word landed heavier. Mara left and hours passed, or minutes. Time inside Eboncourt was slippery. Then Casimir arrived. He entered my suite without fear, as if the room itself belonged to him. Good, he said, noting I was dressed and upright. You are not broken yet. Is that supposed to be encouraging? I asked. His smile was faint. Merely observational. He walked to the balcony and looked out at the black spires. The court is restless. A human consort invites speculation. I don't want to be a consort, I said. And yet, Casimir replied, you are. I clenched my jaw. Tell me about release by proof. Casimir turned, hands behind his back. The court will summon the reliquary of tongues. You will stand before it. The reliquary will draw out the memory of the vow from your mind, your state of intent, your ignorance, your fear. The court will decide whether your vow was valid. And if they decide it was? I asked. Casimir's eyes glinted. Then the engagement proceeds to binding. What does binding mean exactly? I demanded. Casimir's gaze lowered as if choosing his words. A union of blood. A sealing of fate. You would become changed. Not fully vampire, perhaps, but no longer fully human. My stomach turned. No. Casimir inclined his head. Then you must prepare. How? I asked, frustration cracking my voice. I can't rewrite what I said. No, he agreed. But you can shape what the court sees when it looks into you. I stared at him. You want me to manipulate my own memory? Casimir's smile returned, sharp. I want you to survive. That night, Saralith summoned me again, not to the throne hall, but to a smaller chamber lined with books. A library. The air smelled of dust and leather and ink. Candles burned in glass globes. Shadows pooled between shelves. Saralith stood at a table covered in open volumes. She did not look up as I entered. You have questions, she said. Yeah, I replied, voice tight. A lot. She turned a page with slow precision. Ask. I stepped closer, careful not to touch anything. Why did you take my hand? Saralith's fingers paused. Because the vow requires contact. No, I pressed. Before I spoke the vow. You grabbed my hand before I said anything that mattered. Saralith lifted her gaze. Her eyes glowed faintly in the candlelight. I took your hand, she said, because you were going to run. So? I demanded. Why do you care if I run? Saralith's expression tightened. Because if you ran after touching my gate, the court would hunt you. They would tear you apart to learn how you crossed the veil. My anger stalled, replaced by cold dread. So you saved me. Saralith's voice was quiet. I contained you. Why? I asked. Because I'm useful? Saralith's gaze dropped to the open books. Because your presence here is not an accident. My skin prickled. What do you mean? Saralith closed the book with a soft thud. There are cracks in the veil. Humans stumble through them sometimes. Most do not reach my hall. They vanish in the lower corridors, eaten by things that resent your warmth. I swallowed. So why did I reach your hall? Saralith's eyes met mine again. Because the veil opened for you. That's not comforting. It should not be, she replied. Silence stretched. Then unexpectedly Saralith spoke again, softer. Do you know why vows are sacred here, Eli Mercer? I shook my head. Because vampires are hunger, she said. We are desire sharpened into need. Without vows, without law, we would devour everything we touch, including ourselves. Her hand rested on the table, pale fingers against dark wood. Vows are the only thing that make us more than appetite. I stared at her, trying to reconcile the queen in front of me with the creature in the pit. And you? I asked quietly. What are you without vows? Saralith's gaze flickered, something old and painful moving behind it. A ruin. The word hung between us. I felt the ring warm as if responding to that honesty. Why me? I asked again, softer this time. Why not some vampire lord? Why not someone who understands the rules? Saralith's expression hardened. Because the vow was spoken. Because my enemies arranged for a human tongue to stumble into sacred phrases. Because they wanted the vow eater to awaken. My breath caught. So I'm a weapon against you. Saralitha's eyes flared red. Yes. And you still accepted it. Saralitha's voice dropped. Because refusing would have been worse. I stared. Worse how? Saralith leaned forward slightly, the candlelight catching her crown. If I rejected the vow publicly, the court would sense weakness. They would challenge me. They would fracture. And in that fracture, the vow-eater would feed. My throat tightened. So you chose me to keep them together. Saralitha's gaze held mine. I chose the lesser catastrophe. Anger rose again, but it was tangled now with something else. Pity, maybe, or reluctant respect. She wasn't a romantic villainess. She was a monarch doing math with lives. And what do you want? I asked. Not what the court wants. Not what the law wants. What do you want? Saralith was silent for a long moment. The candles hummed softly. Then she said very quietly, I want the veil to hold. I felt something sink in my chest. She didn't say she wanted love. She didn't say she wanted power. She wanted containment. Survival. And me? I asked, voice rough. What do you want from me? Saralitha's gaze dropped to my ring. To endure 3 nights. That's it. Her eyes lifted again, red glow steady. If you endure, you may leave. If you cannot, you will become part of what keeps this place standing. A chill ran through me. I realized then that the court's romance narrative, the human fiancé, the unexpected engagement, was a mask over something much darker. This engagement wasn't about marriage. It was about using me as a living hinge in a door that kept a monster asleep. And the worst part was, I could feel the hinge turning. The second night was designed to make me doubt myself. I didn't realize that at first. I thought it was simply another ritual, another strange pageant in this castle of rules. But when the court assembled in the hall of stained glass, not the throne hall, but a smaller cathedral-like chamber where the windows depicted scenes of betrayal, I felt it immediately. This wasn't about politics. This was about my faith. Not religious faith necessarily. Faith in my own perception. Faith that I was still myself. Casimir stood at the front with a silver chalice. Saralith sat on a raised dais, watching like a judge at a trial she had already survived. Ashran lounged near the windows, smiling faintly. Casimir spoke to the gathered court. The engagement vow is the offering of 3. We have witnessed the offering of hand. Tonight we test the offering of faith. My stomach tightened. Faith. Casimir's gaze landed on me. Human. Step forward. I did, legs stiff. The court watched with hungry interest. Casimir raised the chalice. Drink. I stared at it. The liquid inside was blacker than the feast's wine, thicker, almost moving. What is it? I asked. A draught of remembrance, Casimir replied. It will show us what you believe. I looked at Saralith, silently pleading for explanation. Her face was unreadable. If I refuse? I asked. Ashren's voice drifted from the side. Refusal is proof of weakness. Weakness is proof your vow was spoken with cowardice. Cowardice does not earn release. My jaw clenched. Saralith spoke then, her voice low but carrying. Drink, Eli Mercer. Something in her tone, command yes but also warning, pushed me forward. I took the chalice. The liquid smelled like cold metal and smoke. I drank. It slid down my throat like ink. For a moment nothing happened. Then the room twisted. The stained glass bled color. The pillars bent like soft wax. The candles flared, then vanished. And suddenly I was back in my city. My street. My alley. Rain on brick. The sound of traffic. The normal hum of life. Relief hit me so hard my knees almost buckled. I stumbled forward, reaching for the alley wall, my familiar brick wall. But the seam was there again. The black stone door. And beside it stood Saralith. Not in her gown, not crowned. She wore a simple black dress, hair loose, eyes still faintly red. She looked less like a monarch and more like a woman who had lived too long. You can go back, she said. My heart pounded. How? Walk away, she replied. Leave this door untouched. Let the vow remain unfulfilled. I stared at her. But you said. This is a dream, she said. A vision. A test. I swallowed. So if I walk away the vow breaks. Saralith nodded once. And the vow-eater wakes. The court falls. My city, Abencourt, bleeds into yours. Your world becomes a feeding ground. The alley seemed to darken as she spoke, as if shadows gathered at the edges of reality. My breath came fast. "You're lying." Saralith's expression didn't change. "Am I?" The city around me shifted. People on the street turned their heads in unison, eyes glowing red. Cars stopped. Streetlights flickered. The sky darkened, becoming the same heavy night I'd seen from the balcony. A scream rose in the distance. I turned back to Saralith, panic sharpening. "Stop this." "I cannot," she said. "Not if you choose to run." My hands trembled. This was the test. Faith. Not in gods. In consequences. In the reality of Ebencourt's danger. I looked at the door. Looked at my normal street. My normal life. I wanted it so badly it hurt. But I could still feel the ring on my finger even in the vision. Warm. Present. Hungry. I thought of the pit. The darkness coiling. The whisper scraping my skull. I thought of Saralith's quiet confession. "I want the veil to hold." I didn't trust vampires. But I trusted hunger. And hunger was real. I turned away from the street. I stepped toward the door. Saralith's eyes softened by the smallest degree, like someone watching a condemned man choose dignity. "Good," she whispered. The vision shattered. I was back in the hall of stained glass, the chalice slipping from my hand. Casimir caught it before it hit the floor. The court murmured. Saralith's gaze locked onto mine. "What did you see?" Casimir asked. I swallowed, voice shaking. "A choice." "And what did you choose?" he pressed. I looked at Saralith, then at the watching court. "I chose not to run," I said, and the words tasted like ash. The court hissed, some disappointed, some impressed. A Shren's smile faded slightly, annoyance flickering. Saralith remained calm. But I saw it, the tension in her shoulders easing by a fraction, as if my choice had tightened the chain around the monster in the pit. Casimir nodded. "Faith then is not absent." I exhaled shakily. But I understood now what they were doing. They weren't merely testing whether I deserved release. They were testing whether I could serve as a lock. And the second night proved something I didn't want to admit. Part of me was already invested in this world's survival. Not because I loved it, because I was terrified of what would happen if it spilled into mine. And because Saralith, cold, controlled Saralith, looked like someone who had been holding the wall against the ocean for centuries. That kind of endurance changes how you see a monster. Sometimes it makes you wonder what the monster is protecting you from. By the third night, the ring felt like part of my body. Not physically fused, though it might as well have been. More like my nerves had learned its weight, my blood had learned its rhythm. It pulsed faintly every time Saralith was near, like it was counting the distance between us. St. Valer's moon rose beyond the stained glass, pale and huge, bleeding silver light into the hall like a wound. The court gathered in the throne hall again. But tonight the atmosphere wasn't celebratory. It was tense, expectant. A trial night. At the center of the hall, where I'd first stood shocked and confused, stood an object that hadn't been there before. A massive stone arch studded with silver teeth, inscribed with runes that crawled when I tried to read them. Hanging within the arch was a set of black ribbon-like strands, dozens of them, swaying gently as if in an invisible current. The reliquary of tongues. I knew what it was the moment I saw it. Not because anyone told me, but because my body reacted. My throat tightened, my mouth went dry, my tongue felt too large in my mouth. This thing wasn't going to read my mind like a polite psychic. It was going to eat my language and spit out the truth. Casimir stood before it, solemn. Ashran watched from the side, sharp as a knife. Saralith sat on her throne, still as death, but her eyes were fixed on me with a focus that made my skin prickle. Casimir raised his voice. "Eli Mercer, human of the outer city. You stand before the reliquary to petition release by proof. Speak your petition." My mouth opened. My voice sounded small in the vast hall. "I petition for release," I said, forcing steadiness. Because my vow was spoken without understanding, under fear, and without intent to bind my future. A murmur moved through the court. Casimir nodded. "Then step into the arch." My legs moved like they weren't mine. The mist curled around my ankles. The floating candles hovered closer, eager. I stepped into the arch. The black strands within it drifted toward my face like slow snakes. I tried not to flinch. Casimir spoke in a language that made the pillars vibrate. The strands snapped forward and touched my lips, my tongue, my throat. Cold. Not like ice, like the absence of heat in the universe. I gagged, but the strands tightened, holding me still. Then the world opened. Memories spilled, not in order, not neatly, but like someone dumping a box of photographs onto a table. My childhood kitchen. My mother's tired smile. My first heartbreak. My first lie. Every time I said, "I'm fine," when I wasn't. Every promise I made casually and forgot. The reliquary wasn't just looking at the vow. It was judging my relationship with words. I felt my throat burn. A voice rose in the hall, not mine, but made from my own memories. "Hand," it intoned, and the word echoed from the pillars. I saw myself touching the black stone door. I saw Saralith taking my hand. I saw the ring sliding onto my finger, blood rising, sinking. "Faith," the voice intoned. I saw the vision of the alley, the choice to run, the city darkening, the fear of invasion. "Future," the voice intoned. And suddenly the memory shifted, not to my past but to something else. A possible future. I saw myself in Ebon Court, dressed in royal black, standing beside Saralith on the throne dais. I saw my eyes changed, shadowed, faintly red. I saw myself smiling at vampire courtiers, a smile that didn't reach my soul. I saw myself feeding, not on blood but on something subtler. Warmth, hope, time. I saw my city in the outer world turning pale, drained as Ebon Court's influence seeped through cracks. I saw Saralith watching me, expression unreadable. I saw myself reach for her hand with familiarity. And then I saw her flinch. Not from my touch, from the ring. The future twisted. I saw the Vow Eater rising, a tower of darkness with silver teeth, devouring the throne hall. I saw Saralith screaming, not in fear but in fury. I saw Ashran torn apart like cloth. I saw Casimir's polite smile finally break into terror. I saw my world outside becoming night forever. My stomach lurched. I tried to scream but the strands held my voice. The reliquary wasn't just showing me the future. It was showing the court the shape of what my vow could become. The strands loosened suddenly and I fell to my knees, gasping. The hall was silent. Saralith's eyes glowed brighter than I'd seen yet, like two red stars. Casimir's face was tight, strained by what he'd witnessed. Ashren's expression was no longer amused. The court, those ancient predators, looked shaken. Because they'd just seen something they didn't like. The possibility of their world ending. Casimir spoke carefully. The reliquary has shown us the vow's roots. It has shown us the petitioner's relationship to words. It has shown us possible branches of outcome. He turned his gaze to Saralith. "Your Majesty, the court awaits your judgment." Saralith rose slowly. The hall seemed to bow with her movement. She descended the steps, gown whispering, crown catching candlelight like a threat. She stopped in front of me. I looked up at her, breath ragged, throat raw, eyes burning. Her gaze was unreadable. "I have seen your fear," she said softly. "I have seen your choices." I swallowed. "Then, let me go." Saralith's eyes narrowed slightly. "If I let you go, the vow breaks." "No," I rasped. There has to be another way." Saralith leaned closer, voice too low for the court. "There is." My heart pounded. "What?" Saralith's gaze held mine, and for the first time I saw something like desperation beneath the authority, controlled desperation, the kind that never shows itself unless the wall is truly about to crack. "You can fulfill the vow in a way that does not chain you forever," she murmured. "A consort in name. A guardian in function. A human anchor to stabilize the veil." I stared. "And then I get to go?" Saralith's lips tightened. "Not fully." A cold dread washed over me. "So it's a lie." Saralith's eyes flashed. "No. It is a bargain." I shook my head. "I didn't ask for this." Saralith straightened and faced the court again. "Eli Mercer has proven one thing," she said, voice carrying. "He does not flee when he understands consequence. He does not refuse when fear is offered as excuse." The court murmured, uneasy. Saralith's gaze swept the assembled vampires. "But the reliquary has shown another truth. The vow is unstable. It was spoken with ignorance. And ignorance is a crack." She lifted her hand, palm outward. "The court may grant release," she said, "but the Vow Eater will feed." A shiver passed through the hall. Saralith's voice hardened. "Or the court may demand binding, and the Vow Eater will feed on the human's ruined future, twisting him into something that will eventually fracture the veil anyway." More murmurs. The court understood now. Both obvious choices were poison. Saralith's eyes glowed like embers. So we choose the third path. Ashren's voice cut in sharply. There is no third path. Serelith turned her gaze on him, and the temperature seemed to drop. There is when a queen commands it. Casimir's expression tightened. Majesty, the law? The law was written to contain monsters, Serelith snapped, and her voice cracked like thunder. It was not written to appease cowards who hide behind tradition while the world collapses. Silence slammed down. Then Serelith's voice softened again, controlled. We will perform the rite of half-fulfillment. Gasps rippled through the court. Casimir's eyes widened slightly, real surprise, the first crack in his polished demeanor. Ashren stepped forward, furious. You cannot. That rite is forbidden. It was sealed after the last queen used it to save her city, Serelith cut in, and was punished for it. She looked down at me. Eli Mercer, she said, voice low. Do you accept the rite? My throat burned. My mind spun. Half-fulfillment. A bargain. Not freedom, not full binding. A limbo. But the reliquary had shown me the futures. I'd seen the world end. I'd seen myself become hollow. If there was a chance to avoid both catastrophes, if there was a chance to protect my world and still keep some part of myself intact. I swallowed hard. What does it cost? Serelith's eyes held mine. A promise you choose. A promise chosen had weight. My hand shook. And what do you promise? Serelith's voice was barely audible. That I will not consume you. I stared at her. A vampire queen promising restraint. That might have been the most radical thing spoken in this hall. I looked at the court, predators, ancient, hungry. I looked at Ashren's fury. I looked at Casimir's careful calculation. And I looked at Serelith, a queen holding a wall against a sea of darkness. I exhaled, trembling. I accept. The hall erupted into angry murmurs, but Serelith lifted her hand and silence returned like a leash snapping tight. Prepare the rite, she commanded. And in that moment I realized, the engagement hadn't merely trapped me. It had placed me at the center of a power struggle older than my country. And my wrong words were now about to become deliberate ones. They didn't take me to a chapel. They took me back underground to the chamber with the pit. Because the rite wasn't about love. It was about feeding the law just enough to keep it from devouring us all. The circular chamber was lit with more candles than before, hundreds of them, floating in concentric rings, their flames deep crimson. Chains hung like suspended verdicts. The runes on the floor glowed faintly, silver lines cutting through black stone. The pit breathed. Darkness rose from it in slow, hungry coils as if it sensed ceremony. The court assembled around the circle, keeping distance from the edge. Even vampires respected a mouth that could eat vows. Serelith stood at the center, near the pit, crown on her head, gown trailing like spilled night. Casimir stood beside her, holding a scroll of black parchment. Ashren stood farther back, eyes burning with resentment, fists clenched. Mara stood behind Serelith, hands folded, face unreadable. I stood opposite Serelith, inside the glowing runic circle, my ring pulsing warmly like a heartbeat that wasn't mine. Casimir began to speak, voice formal, ancient. The words sounded like law carved into stone. I didn't understand them, but my body reacted as if it did, my blood humming, my skin prickling, my lungs feeling too small. Then Serelith spoke in plain language. Eli Mercer, she said, gaze fixed on me. You offered hand, faith, and future. The court demands fulfillment or punishment. We choose a third path. Her voice dropped. Half-fulfillment. Casimir's jaw tightened, but he remained silent. Serelith extended her hand. My breath caught. I stepped forward and took it. The moment our fingers intertwined, the runes flared brighter, and the pit's darkness surged upward like a tide. The court hissed, stepping back. Serelith did not flinch. Speak, she commanded me, voice low. My throat tightened. What do I say? Serelith's eyes held mine. Not what you blurted. Not what fear spilled. Speak what you choose. A promise chosen. I swallowed, tasting blood where the reliquary had scraped my throat. I looked at the pit, at the darkness licking the edge of the circle. I looked at the court, hungry and watchful. I looked at Serelith, this queen who was terrifying, yes, but also holding something back. I choose this promise, I said, voice shaking but clear. I will not flee from what I've caused until the veil is stable again. The words landed like stones. The runes pulsed. The pit's darkness trembled as if disappointed it wasn't getting a full feast. Saralitha's eyes narrowed slightly, then softened by the smallest degree. "And I choose this promise," she said. "I will not take your blood without your consent." The court erupted into shocked murmurs. Ashran stepped forward, furious. "Majesty." Saralitha's gaze snapped to him. "Silence." Ashran froze, trembling with rage, but he obeyed. Casimir's voice resumed, strained. "By the right of half-fulfillment, the offering of 3 shall be divided." The runes blazed. Casimir continued. "Hand shall be fulfilled in bond. Faith shall be fulfilled in witness. Future shall be held in suspension, neither devoured nor sealed, until the covenant is satisfied." The pit roared, not with sound but with pressure. The darkness surged upward, forming a vague shape, a mass of hunger reaching for us. Saralith lifted our joined hands toward it. The ring pulsed hard, burning. Pain shot up my arm and I gasped. Saralitha's grip tightened, anchoring me. Then the darkness struck, touching the ring, tasting it. For an instant I felt something vast and cold press against my mind. A hunger so pure it felt holy. Promise, it seemed to whisper. Not a request. A demand. My body trembled. Saralitha's voice cut through, sharp as steel. "You will be sated." The darkness recoiled slightly, then wrapped around our joined hands like smoke around a flame. The ring heated until it felt molten. Then it cooled abruptly and I felt something change, not a tightening but a reshaping. The bond between Saralith and me loosened, becoming less like a chain and more like a tether. Still binding, but was slack. I staggered, breathing hard. Saralith released my hands slowly, and the darkness retreated into the pit, settling like a beast curling up after being fed. The runes dimmed. Casimir exhaled shakily. The court murmured in uneasy outrage, but there was also relief, because the pit had not erupted. Saralith looked at me, eyes still glowing. "It is done," she said. I swallowed, voice hoarse. "So, what now?" Saralitha's expression was unreadable. "Now you are my consort in the eyes of the court, but not my property in the eyes of hunger." I stared. "That's better?" Saralitha's lips twitched, almost a smile. "Do not mistake better for safe." Ashren's voice cut through again, cold with venom. "You have weakened the law." Saralith turned her gaze on him. "I have strengthened it by giving it a future it cannot devour." Ashren's eyes flashed. "And what will the other houses say when they hear you have taken a human and refused to bind him fully? They will smell weakness. They will come." Saralitha's gaze hardened. "Let them." Ashren's smile was sharp. "They will not come for you alone, Majesty." His eyes flicked to me. "They will come for him." The chill that ran through me was immediate, instinctive. Saralitha's hand moved, so subtly it looked like nothing, but I felt the air shift, protective. "They will not touch what is under my crown," she said. But her eyes looked for a moment like someone doing math again. And I realized, the right had bought time. Not peace. Time. And in Ebon Court, time was the most expensive currency of all. After the right, they did not lock me away. They gave me access. Not freedom, never that. But corridors opened to me. Doors that had been sealed now yielded when I approached, as if the ring whispered my permission. Servants bowed lower. Courtiers watched me with a different hunger, not merely curiosity but calculation. A half-fulfilled consort was a political anomaly. An invitation. And Saralith began to treat me less like a mistake and more like an asset she hadn't chosen but would use. She summoned me to the balcony overlooking the black spires. The night sky hung heavy. St. Valer's moon was still visible, pale, immense. The red floating lights drifted like embers carried by invisible wind. Saralith stood at the railing, her gown moving slightly in the breeze. Without the court around her, she looked almost lonely. I approached carefully, keeping a respectful distance. "Your Majesty," I said. Saralith didn't look at me. "Do you regret it?" I blinked. "Regret what?" "Choosing the promise," she said. I stared out at the spires. "I regret walking into the alley. I regret touching the door. I regret being an idiot with my words." Saralitha's gaze finally shifted to me, faint red glow steady. "And yet you chose to stay." "Because I saw what happens if I don't," I replied. Saralitha's expression tightened. "You saw a vision. Visions are not certainties." They felt pretty certain, I muttered. Saralitha's lips twitched, almost amused. You are not as foolish as you appear. Thanks, I said dryly. Silence stretched, filled only by distant water sounds and the soft drift of red lights. Then Saralith did something unexpected. She took off her glove. It was black, fitted, elegant. Beneath it, her hand was pale, veins faintly visible like silver threads under skin. She turned her palm upward. Look, she said. I hesitated, then stepped closer. In the center of her palm was a scar. Not a simple scar. A symbol, an old rune burned into flesh, jagged and dark. It looked like a wound that had healed wrong. What is that? I asked quietly. Saralitha's gaze remained on her palm. The punishment. For the right? I asked. Saralith nodded once. A previous queen used half-fulfillment to save her city. The law punished her by marking her with the hunger rune. A reminder that even queens are bound. I stared at the scar, feeling something twist in my chest. You knew you'd be punished, I said. Saralitha's eyes lifted to mine. Yes. And you did it anyway? Yes. Why? I asked, voice rough. Saralitha's expression hardened, but behind it was something like exhaustion. Because I am tired of being a wall that is not allowed to bend. The words hit me harder than any threat. I looked at her, this queen who ruled predators, who held back monsters, who lived in night forever. For the first time, I saw her not as a villain, not as a seductress queen from a dark romance cliché, but as someone who had been forced into a role until her identity fused with it. And I realized something frightening. My vow had given her a chance to change the law. And she had taken it, at personal cost, without hesitation. That wasn't kindness. It was courage. And courage is dangerous because it makes you care. I swallowed, throat tight. So what happens now? Saralith closed her glove slowly, covering the scar. Now the other houses will challenge me. They will claim the law has weakened. They will try to break the covenant and feed the vow eater. My stomach twisted. How do they break it? Saralitha's gaze sharpened. By forcing you to betray your promise. I stared. My promise to not flee? Saralith nodded. If you run now, the vow eater will feed. If you refuse the role publicly, the court fractures. If you speak a counter-vow, words that negate the first, the law collapses. My hands trembled. So they'll try to scare me. They will try to tempt you, Saralith corrected. They will offer you escape. They will offer you power. They will offer you revenge against me. I laughed harshly. Revenge? For what? You didn't even want this. Saralitha's gaze lingered on me. Some of them believe I did. I frowned. What do you mean? Saralitha's voice dropped. There are stories about me. Stories that say I am cold because I am cruel. Stories that say I am alone because I devoured every consort I took. My stomach tightened. Did you? Saralitha's eyes flashed. No. The sharpness in that single word was absolute. Then her voice softened slightly. I did not take consorts. I refused them. I refused the court's hunger. That refusal made enemies. I stared at her, suddenly understanding the political shape of her loneliness. So this engagement makes you look hypocritical, I said. Saralitha's lips tightened. It makes me look vulnerable. And vulnerability is blood and water. A cold wind swept across the balcony. Saralith looked out at the spires again. You may still seek release, she said quietly. The right bought time. When the veil stabilizes, you can leave. The words should have been comforting. Instead, they made something inside me ache. Because the thought of leaving, of returning to my paused life, my normal city, now carried an image of Saralith alone again, marked by punishment, holding the wall by herself. I hated that my mind produced that image. Hated that it mattered. I don't want to die, I said finally. Saralith looked at me. Then do not betray your promise. And if I don't? I asked. If I stay, if I keep my word, what happens to me? Saralitha's gaze dropped to my ring. Your future remains suspended. That is the cost. You will not fully belong to your world, nor fully to mine, until the covenant is satisfied. So I'm trapped, I said bitterly. Saralitha's eyes met mine. You are between worlds, between vows, between monster and human. A liminal consort. A political bomb wrapped in human skin. Saralitha's hand, gloved again, rested briefly on the railing near mine. Not touching. But close enough that I felt the heatless chill of her presence. Eli Mercer, she said softly, you said the wrong words. But you have begun to say the right ones. I swallowed hard because those words were almost tender. And in a place where tenderness was rare, it felt like a threat to my heart. The attack did not come with swords. It came with a visitor. On the fourth night, because the court's calendar didn't care about my desire for clean story arcs, an envoy arrived from House Morvain. They entered the throne hall with theatrical grace. A tall vampire woman draped in white silk that looked like funeral cloth, her hair long and silver, her eyes a pale pink that made my skin crawl. Behind her came guards in bone-colored armor, their faces hidden behind masks shaped like smiling skulls. Sarilith sat on her throne, composed, crown steady. I stood at her side, not seated because my place in this court was always shifting. A reminder that I belonged but not fully. The envoy bowed. Queen Sarilith. I bring greetings from Lady Morvain, keeper of the Crimson Synod. Sarilith's voice was calm. Speak. The envoy smiled, delicate and cruel. The Synod has heard of your engagement. A murmur moved through the court. Sarilith's gaze did not flicker. News travels. Indeed, the envoy purred. And the Synod wonders why you have chosen a human. Why you have chosen weakness. My ring warmed slightly, reacting to the word. Sarilith's eyes glowed faintly. Careful. The envoy's smile widened. Or perhaps you did not choose. Perhaps you were trapped. Perhaps you were forced to accept a vow spoken in ignorance. How embarrassing for a queen who claims mastery of law. The court tensed, hungry for conflict. Ashren's eyes gleamed, waiting. Casimir's expression was polite, but his jaw tightened. Sarilith's voice was a blade wrapped in velvet. State your purpose. The envoy lifted a hand. A scroll appeared, black parchment edged in silver. The Synod offers a remedy, she said. A counter-vow. My stomach dropped. Sarilith's gaze sharpened. You come into my hall and offer to break my covenant? The envoy bowed again. We offer to save you from it. Speak the counter-vow, Majesty. Release the human. Restore your dignity. The court murmured, some approving, some outraged. Sarilith's eyes flicked to me for the briefest moment. Not a glance of ownership. A glance of calculation, and something else. Warning. My throat tightened. This was it. The siege of words. The enemy wasn't trying to kill me. They were trying to make me break. Because if Sarilith spoke the counter-vow, the engagement would unravel and the vow-eater would feed. But if Sarilith refused, the Synod would claim she clung to a human out of weakness, or desire, which would invite challenges, war, fracture. Either way, pressure. The envoy turned her gaze to me, pale pink eyes gleaming. Human, she said sweetly. Do you wish to go home? The question hit my chest like a hammer. My mind filled instantly with images of my city, my life paused like a held breath. My friends who didn't know I was gone. My mother who would worry if I vanished for real. My own bed, my own sky, the sun. Yes, God, yes. The envoy's smile softened, pretending compassion. Then speak, she whispered. Tell your queen you rescind your vow. Tell her you refuse this engagement. Speak and you will be free. My ring pulsed, warm as a heartbeat. I looked at Sarilith. She stood still, gaze on the envoy, expression calm. But I could feel it now, the tether between us. The covenant's thread. Her tension. The strain of holding the law in place. I understood what the court had been testing all along. Hand, faith, future. They had tried to make me weak. Now they wanted my future, my desire to escape, to become betrayal. If I said the counter words, I would doom this place and possibly mine. If I stayed silent, I remained trapped. If I defended Sarilith, I became her weapon. A wrong word had bound me. Now the right words could either free me at the cost of apocalypse, or bind me by choice. My throat tightened. I stepped forward before fear could stop me. The court stirred. Vampires leaned in hungry. The envoy's eyes brightened, certain I would break. I spoke. I want to go home, I said, voice clear. The court murmured. The envoy smiled. Sarilith's posture tightened slightly. And I will, I continued. When the veil is stable. When the law is not a mouth waiting to eat the world. The envoy's smile faltered. I turned my gaze fully on her. You're not offering me freedom. You're offering me the privilege of being the match that lights both worlds on fire. The envoy's eyes narrowed. Careful, human. I laughed and the sound was raw. No. You be careful. Because I learned something here. I lifted my hand showing the ring. I learned that words do things, I said. And I'm done speaking like they don't. The hall held its breath. I looked at Saralith then, my queen by accident, my anchor by law. And I made a choice I hadn't known I was capable of. I renew my promise, I said, voice ringing through the hall. I will not flee from what I've caused. I will not speak counter-vows. I will not be used to awaken the thing beneath this throne. The ring flared warm, almost hot. The runes carved into the pillars glowed faintly. The court hissed, startled. The envoy's expression twisted with fury. You have no authority to. Saralith's voice cut in, calm and absolute. He does now. Silence slammed down. Saralith stepped forward, gaze locked on the envoy. Return to Lady Morvain, she said. Tell her the covenant holds. Tell her the human has chosen his promise. The envoy's lips curled. You think this ends it? Saralith's eyes glowed redder. It begins it. The envoy bowed stiffly, then turned and left with her bone-armored guards, white silk trailing like a shroud. When the hall doors shut, the court erupted into murmurs, some outraged, some impressed, some fearful. Ashran stared at me like he'd never seen me before. Casimir's expression was unreadable, but his eyes held something like reluctant admiration. Saralith looked at me. For a long moment she said nothing. Then quietly she spoke so only I could hear. You just bound yourself more deeply, she murmured. I swallowed, throat tight. I know. Saralith's gaze searched my face. Why? The question wasn't political. It was personal. And the answer surprised me by being simple. Because I don't want my freedom to be someone else's apocalypse, I whispered. And because you didn't have to show me your scar. Saralith's eyes flickered. Then she turned away, facing the throne again, the mask of queenship sliding back into place. But as she ascended the steps, she paused. And without looking back, she said softly, Eli Mercer. When this is over, you may choose your future again. A promise? Not a vow, not yet. But something close enough to make my chest ache. The court continued to whisper, and the castle continued to breathe, and somewhere beneath us the vow-eater curled tighter in its pit, frustrated, denied its feast. And I realized the ending I'd expected, the one where I escaped, where the vampire queen remained a dark fantasy detour in my life, was no longer the only possible ending. Because I hadn't simply survived Eboncourt. I had become part of its balance. Not by accident this time. By choice. And as the red candles floated in patient rings and the stained glass watched like 1,000 silent witnesses, I understood the real twist of my story. I didn't say the wrong words once. I said them twice. The first time, I bound myself without knowing. The second time, I bound myself with my eyes open. And that,